Hi ladies, it's Mr. O'Sullivan. Today we're going to be looking at lesson 3-8a, the Pythagorean Theorem. Quick typo, 1 second. Very good. This is November 29th's lesson. Today's learning target is, I can apply the Pythagorean Theorem to determine the value of a missing segment length on a right triangle. It's very important to know that the Pythagorean Theorem can only be used on right triangles. So the Pythagorean theorem states that if a triangle is a right triangle, then the square of the length of the longest side is equal to the sum of the squares of the lengths of the two other sides, your legs. That's a lot of mumbo-jumbo jargon. In other words, the way you've seen this in middle school is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now, your hypotenuse is c, and your legs are a and b. Now, it doesn't matter which leg you make A or which leg you make B, as long as you don't make your hypotenuse one of those values. So if I look at this right triangle, my hypotenuse is across from my right angle. It's always going to be across from your right angle, so I'm just going to label this as hypotenuse. And what that means is that my other two sides are my legs. So this is a leg and this is a leg. Now, if I want to label this, I know my hypotenuse is C, so I'm going to put a C where my hypotenuse is. And then I'm just going to put an A and B on my legs. I could put my A here, B there. You could also put B here and then A there, but you can't make them both A or both B. So let's see how the Pythagorean theorem works. Question 1 says, find the length of the hypotenuse. So if I look, my hypotenuse is the side across from my right angle, and we know that our hypotenuse is C, so I'm just going to label this as C. If you think about it, this would be my A or my B, and then this would be my other value. So we know the Pythagorean theorem states a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So we're now going to type that information in. So we have 28 squared plus 45 squared equals c squared. So I'm going to go to my calculator and type in 28 squared plus 45 squared, and that gives me 2,809. So I can say c squared is equal to 2,809. Now, the only way to get rid of that square is to take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So I take the square root of 2,809, and when I do that, I get 53. So I can say c is equal to 53. And that's your final answer. So my hypotenuse is 53. Question number 2. The lengths of the legs of a right triangle are square root 10 and square root 14. Find the length of the hypotenuse in simplest radical form. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to set up our image, because we don't have an image drawn, so we should draw in an image to make sure we know what the question's asking. So what I'm going to do is, since we're talking about a right triangle, is I'm going to draw a right triangle. And as you can tell, I'm great at drawing. I can even put in my right angle as well. So if you think about it, it says the legs are radical 10 and radical 14. So I'm going to make this radical 10 and this radical 14. I want to find the length of the hypotenuse. So we know our hypotenuse is across from our right angle, so we're just going to label it C. So we know the Pythagorean theorem states a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So if I look, I can say that this is my A and this is my B. So I have radical 10 squared plus radical 14 squared equals c squared. So I'm going to go to my calculator and I'm going to type out radical 10 squared plus radical 14 squared, and that gives me 24. So I can say c squared is equal to 24. So now the only way to get rid of that square is to take the square root of both sides. So when I take the square root of c squared, I just get c, and now I need to break apart radical 24. So I'm going to go downstairs and write down 24, and we're going to break it apart using prime factorization. To make 24, I can do 2 and 12. To make 12, I can do 2 and 6. And then to make 6, I can do 2 and 3. I'm going to highlight all my prime numbers. And my primes are 2, 2, 2, and 3. So I have radical 1, 2, 3, and then a 3. Double on the inside, single on the outside. So I have a double 2. So I have 2 radical 2 times 3 is 6. So I can say C is equal to 2 radical 6. And that's my final answer. Now, this example says find the missing side length. If you look, we're going to label our image A, B, and C. So I have my A, my B, and then my side across from the hypotenuse is always C. So for this problem, I can say A squared plus B squared equals C squared. If you look, I know A is 9.7. So I have 9.7 squared plus B squared equals 13.3 squared. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to type that into my calculator. So I have 9.7 squared, which is 94.09, plus B squared. Now I do 13.3 squared. And that gives me 176.89. Now I want to solve for B, so I need to get this 94.09 to the right-hand side of my equation. So I'm going to subtract 94.09 from each side. That gets me B squared is equal to, well, now I do 176.89 minus 94.09. That's 82.8. Now I take the square root of both sides, and I can say B is equal to second x squared, 82.8, and I get 9.099450539. I'm just going to round to the nearest tenth, so I get 9.1 as my final answer. So B is equal to 9.1. Example. Find the area of the triangle. If you look, we have a triangle and we don't know the length of our whole base. We know that the area formula for a triangle is, let's see, we know that our area formula for a triangle is base times height divided by 2, or you can write it as area equals 1/2 the base times the height. I prefer the first way, it looks more sophisticated. So if I look, I don't know what the base of my triangle is. So we have to find it. And we're missing this piece right here. So I know that this is a right triangle. I'm going to put an A here, a B here, and a C here. So we need to find out what A is. So we know we can do A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So I have A squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared. I'm going to simplify. So I get A squared plus 16 equals 25. And now I need to solve for A. So I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides of my equation. I get A squared is equal to 9. And now I take the square root of both sides. When I take the square root of 9, I get 3. So I can say A is equal to 3. So now I go to my image, and I put my 3 in, and now I know what the length of my base is. The length of my base is 7, because 4 plus 3 is 7. So now I go to my area formula. My area formula we said is base times height divided by 2. And if you look, we know what our base is. Our base is 7. Our height is 4. We always measure height this way, not slanted. And then we just divide by 2. 7 times 4 is 28, and 28 divided by 2 is 14. So I can say my area is 14 units squared. And that's my final answer. If you have any questions, email myself or Ms. Calarundo.